Are you ready? All right, I want you to look across the table and I want you to pick somebody out and I want you to tell them, take a flying leap. I want you to look to another table. I want you to look to a table next to you or behind you or in front of you. I want you to look somebody square in the eyes and I want you to tell them, take a flying leap. Now, some of you are wanting to nudge your spouse and say that to your spouse. Some of you employees that are here with your employer, you have been waiting for the opportunity to tell them to take a flying leap. A number of years ago, I was speaking at a conference in the eastern parts of Oklahoma, the thriving metropolis of Sallisaw, Oklahoma. Now, it's right on the western edges of the Ozark Mountains. It's absolutely beautiful, very stunning place. A friend of mine was the event coordinator, and he knew I'm an adventure junkie. I do some crazy things. I like adventure, global travel, and all sorts of things. And so he said, Jerome, why don't you come early, and we'll go jump some of the cliffs that we have north of town. And so I was excited. I was ready for it. So we loaded up the car, and he brought a couple of students. This was a student conference that I was speaking at, and he brought them to join us, and so we're ready for some fun. We get to the parking area of White's Lake, just north of Sallisaw, and we see above us a cliff that is 60 feet above the ground. Now, from the ground up, it doesn't seem like much. 60 feet doesn't seem like it's impossible, but when you get to the top and you look down, you realize how high 60 feet is. Well, this is the first time I would be jumping a cliff of this size, and I had two teenage boys who had never jumped any cliffs before, so this was going to be a fun trip for us. Now, I need to introduce you to these guys because they're very important to the story. The first guy I want to introduce you to, his name is Twig. Everybody say hi, Twig. Twig is called Twig for a reason because he's a featherweight. He's a lightweight. I mean, this guy is just skin and bones and that's it. But he's a great kid who's got a sense of adventure. The other kid that's with us, his name is Bubba. Everybody say, yo, Bubba, what's up? Oh, you guys are awesome. We're having fun today. So Bubba is a linebacker-sized guy. And here's what's funny about Bubba. When he gets out of the car, Bubba puts on one of those orange life jackets that you wear, you know, a little kid wears in a boat. And Bubba is huge. He's a linebacker, right? And he's got this little PFD, personal flotation device that he's got. And I looked at him and I said, Bubba, what do you think that's going to do for you? He said, man, we're jumping off a cliff. I want to make sure that I float. I'm like, well, you might need more than that to float. So we decided to walk up and we're going on our way up the trail. Now, I'm a child of the late 60s, early 70s. And by the way, I am native to Albuquerque. I was born just down the street here. So I welcome also all of our friends here from New Mexico, and it's exciting when I speak actually outside of the state because I always introduce New Mexico in a couple of ways. We're the state of, actually, the global capital of green chili. Come on, shout it out for some green chili. But what's funny is, it doesn't matter where I speak, but then I tell them I'm from the city of Breaking Bad, and everybody knows it. We're famous. We are famous. So I'm a child of the 60s and the 70s, grew up right here in Albuquerque, and in those days I was enamored by, adventure things, just it kind of peeled into my adult life as well, and so I was watching shows like The $6 Million Man. How many of you guys remember The Bionic Man? Right? Bionic Man, that was awesome. There was other stuntman shows, The A-Team, and those kind of things in the 70s, and so I remember watching some of the techniques and the tactics of these guys when they would do their stunts. So I had learned how to jump off a bridge, and I had learned how to jump out of a building, and I had learned how to jump off a cliff. At least I thought I did. And so I was going to train these boys on how to jump off this cliff. Halfway up the cliff, I said, guys, we got to stop and practice. And by the way, we're all going to practice right now, so get ready. Put your knives and forks down because I need you to learn the proper stuntman techniques of jumping off a building. Before you take a flying leap, you've got to know how to take a flying leap. So everybody get ready. So I began to tell them, I said, now, guys, in order to not belly flop or back flop, you've got to make sure you wave your arms like this. You got to make sure when you're going up, and they're doing it with me, and they're into it. Twig is into it, Bubba's into it. So, but I need you now because we're about to jump off a cliff. I need you to have the proper form. Everybody get ready on the count of three. Let me see your stuntman form. 1, 2, 3. Oh, come on, get into it. There we go. Awesome. You guys are good. You guys are good. Now, I do need to give a disclaimer. Do not try this at home. This is for trained professionals only. All right, but you're getting your training right now. So we walk all the way to the top of the cliff, and right at the edge of the tree line, this rock jettisons out. So the trail comes right to this rock area, and we step out. Now, we were all cocky. We thought we had this from the ground looking up. But once we got to the top looking down, many of you know that leadership has its challenges, and one of the challenges of leadership, maybe the most significant challenge of leadership, is overcoming our fears. As we begin to step closer to the edge of the cliff, I mean, it's now we're getting scared. Our steps were no longer, that like we had something to us. We're now scared. We're trembling. We get close to the edge. I mean, we're inching our way up there now. Now, let me begin to introduce you a little bit more to Twig. Remember, he's the featherweight. Twig is now trembling. He's standing on the edge of the cliff, and he's like, guys, I can't do this. I can't do this. And I'm looking at Bubba. Bubba has now white-knuckled his life jacket. He is not going to let go. He is holding on for dear life. So he's holding on tight, and he's looking over the edge. I said, Bubba, you going to do this? He's like, this is crazy, man. This is crazy. Looking at Twig. He's like, I can't do this. And I'm looking at the thing going, I have never one time in my life backed down from a challenge, but this might be the first. 15 minutes later, we have argued enough, and I said, guys, let's go on down. Let's go to a lower area, and we'll work our way all the way up. And so we were good with that. So Bubba and Twig, they begin to lead us back down, and we get right to the tree line again. Now, keep in mind, I am not a guy who backs down from a challenge, and I couldn't back down from this one. So I turned around, and I began to run for the edge. Now, this is where my experience with the Bionic Man came in. You guys remember what the sound was when the Bionic Man would run? Come on, everybody, help me out. Keep going. And I just ran as fast as I could. I got to the edge of the cliff, and I screamed at the edge of the cliff, your mama! Woo-hoo! Everybody jump with me. See it? I need everybody jumping because it's a long way down. Woo-hoo! It's a long ways down. Woo-hoo! Hit the water. It was amazing. I high-fived with another friend who had just swam over. He didn't take the jump. And so now I'm looking up at Bubba and Twig, and Twig's now twigging out. And here's Bubba. He's freaking out. And I'm like, guys, you got to jump now. And they're like, we're not going to do it. I said, guys, I'm speaking at the conference tonight, and if you don't jump, I'm going to talk about you. See, there is a difference between motivation and manipulation, right? I'm going to talk about you guys tonight. And so finally they got the courage. Bubba's going to be the first one to go. Bubba is white-knuckling his PFD. He forgets the proper stuntman form, and he jumps off. Now, I want you to envision a Patriot missile, right? Just piercing the ground. I mean, he just torpedoes, jumps straight off. He is falling straight down, feet first, holding his life jacket. He hits the water. If you guys have ever seen the movie for Hunt for Red October, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about right here. When Bubba comes shooting out of the water like a submarine. And there, Bubba and I, we're giving each other high five, and now Twig's at the top, and Twig is twigging out. He's afraid. I'm like, Twig, you got nothing to worry about, dude. You're just going to float down. You're a featherweight. It's no big deal, right? And finally, Twig gets ready. Now, here's what's funny about Twig, because Twig, he starts doing his form before he jumps. Everybody help out Twig. Twig is doing his form before he jumps. He jumps off the cliff. Woo! Now, ladies, when you scream like a girl, it's appropriate. But when a man screams like a girl, it's not so appropriate. Twig is screaming like a girl, so everybody in your best girl scream, let me hear you. Ah! A little bit more. Ah! It's a long ways down. Here he goes. Boom, he hits the water. Man, we had an incredible adventure together. We would have never have known the thrill. We'd have never have known what it was like to jump off a 60-foot cliff. We'd have never have known what it was like to take a flying leap unless we'd have taken that flying leap. Today I want to give you some insights and some principles to help you take a flying leap. I know the challenges of leading a business. In fact, right now, to lead our business forward, we're facing some daunting decisions. We're facing some dilemmas that we have to resolve, and it's scaring me to death. But I find myself in leading my business forward at that place where I'm stepping to the edge, and I've got to decide if I'm going to take a flying leap or not. Are you guys ready to take a flying leap? Look across the table. Tell somebody right now, take a flying leap. Here's what I've discovered in leading 4 different organizations, being the founder of 4 organizations. In your pursuit of success, there will be, and maybe many of you are facing this right now, and I can also tell you, in New Mexico especially, you are going to face exactly what I'm talking about right now. And it's that invisible force field that seems to be holding you back. It's like you are moving forward and then all of a sudden you just run into an obstacle and you can't identify it. You don't understand where it's coming from. You can't say it's economy. You can't say it's a government. You can't say it's anything else. It's just this invisible field that seems to hold us back. We've got big dreams and big aspirations of things we want to do and things we want to accomplish, but we keep hitting that wall. We keep hitting that limitation. We keep hitting that barrier. Let's talk about how do we understand this barrier? How do we get past some of our personal, I've got some notes here, so you guys start writing some things down here. How do we get past our personal or our professional or our organizational barriers? The first thing that I want you to look at today is the limitations that we all deal with. A number of months ago, my wife and I were in Italy, and this was our 25th anniversary, and so Italy was a big deal. We were there for a couple of weeks, and one of the places that we stopped at was in Florence, Italy. It was the Accademia della Galleria. It's where the famous David is. And the David statue is absolutely spectacular because it's the masterpiece of Michelangelo. If you've ever seen it, it's absolutely stunning. It's majestic. In my word, it is a masterpiece of greatness on display. So before, though, you walk into the main corridor, you go through a section where there's many pieces of Michelangelo that are there, but you're so enamored by the David. In fact, the David would be from about where I'm standing now to back where the cameras are. It's about that distance down, and all you can focus on is David. He's well lit. It's the whole design of the building is around the David. And so you forget about all of these other masterpieces that are along the way. My wife and I continue down the hall, the corridor, and we get to the David, and I'm like, this is absolutely amazing, the masterpiece, the precision work without, modern tools and technology. It is baffling what he was able to accomplish. So we're looking at this, and then we begin to back away a little bit to get a bigger picture. And what I began to notice was we had passed 6 or 8 masterpieces of Michelangelo as well. The problem is none of them were finished. Every single one of these statues were unfinished works of Michelangelo. They're half completed. You can see the chisel marks in them. They're very rough. You can sometimes only see a little bit of form to them. But my favorite, and the one that I fell in love with, was Atlas. For some reason, I could really identify with Atlas. I wanted to be David. I wanted to be that finished masterpiece, that beautiful piece of art. I wanted to be David, but I more identified myself with Atlas. And with Atlas, you can almost see the anguish on his face. In fact, they called them the prisoners of Michelangelo because they are imprisoned to their limitation. You see, the David, he was released. He was unleashed. He was activated. His greatness was displayed for the world, but the others were limited. They had this closing in on them. Some of you today might very well identify with those prisoners. You're a half-completed work of art, but here's the difference between you and the prisoners in the Accademia della Galleria. They can do nothing about their pursuit of success. You can take the chisel and the hammer and begin to finish the work that was started. See, business isn't easy. Success isn't easy. If you have a dream worth anything, it's going to be a hard road, and it's going to require you to take that chisel and take that hammer and keep working your dreams until you see them fulfilled. So we have limitations that we deal with. Here's something else that we deal with, and that's leashes. We've been leashed to limitations right here in the Southeast Heights growing up as a boy. I had a dog. My dad brought me a dog when I was a boy, found him right here in downtown Albuquerque as a pup that had a litter. And so he brought him home from work one day, and again, I'm a child of the 70s, so what did I name my dog? Scooby-Doo. There's only one thing you can name a dog in the 70s, Scooby-Doo. So I fell in love with Scooby. Now, I was a little guy, and Scooby was a pup when he came home, but as all dogs do, they grow a lot faster than we humans do, and Scooby real quickly outgrew me, but I loved him. I would take him for walks. I'd take him to the park. I'd play ball and catch and all those things with him. And one day I'm taking Scooby for a walk, and I was so small I was afraid that I was going to lose Scooby, so I tied Scooby to my wrist, right? I'm thinking I'm going to be okay. Scooby had never run away from me before, but this day I was going to be faced with something I'd never had to deal with before, and that was being leashed to a powerhouse. Scooby saw something, maybe it was a rabbit, another dog, or some neighbor's cat down the street, and Scooby started taking off. Now, I'm a little guy. Scooby's a big dog. What's he doing? He's dragging me down the street. I'm trying to hold him back. I'm doing everything I can, and at this specific section of the street, somebody had thrown some dirt over the sidewalk, and right there was like marbles under my feet. So now I'm sliding down the street, and then halfway between two driveways, there's an uplift in the sidewalk. I catch it, and I fall flat on my face. Scooby literally now is dragging me down the street. I'm doing a Superman, just not in a very glamorous way. I mean, he's dragging me down the street, 20 feet, 30 feet later, Scooby finally gives up, realizes that, you know, he's hurt his boy. But I realized that day, I was Scooby's limitation. I was the leash that limited the greatness that this dog had. Some of you feel like you're leashed to these limitations. You're leashed that something or someone is holding you back. So what do we do to cut these leashes? How do we remove these limitations? Here's something else that we often deal with, and that's our lids. We seem like we continue to struggle with these lids, and it just keeps lowering us and lowering maybe expectations, and frustrations escalate as our opportunities seem to become less and less. I want us to go back to September 11th, not the one we are familiar with, the one that happened in 1297. It's the first war between the Scots and the English. You're familiar with the story of William Wallace, Braveheart. This is one of those stories that inspired the movie. This story is taking place at a place in the southern parts of Scotland, the northern parts of England. It's the city of Stirling. There is a river there on the south side of the city that's called the River Forth. It's a strong river. It's not a river you'd really walk across or swim across. It's got a bridge that crosses it, but it's a very narrow bridge. That bridge is really only the width of the table that you have in front of you, just enough for 2 horses and a cart to go across. Well, William Wallace, in his brilliance, decided to leverage the opportunity of the Stirling Bridge to defeat the English. Only the English weren't aware of what was happening. Wallace, now you have to understand the odds. At least 10,000 English to 1,000 Scots. The odds are incredibly against them. Kind of sounds like business in New Mexico, doesn't it? Odds against us, but that shouldn't stop us. Because listen, I'm telling you, you can lead past your limitations, you can lead past your lids, you can lead past those leashes. It takes leadership intelligence to do it. Here's what William Wallace does. Creates the scenario, creates the battlefield, and now he's going to draw the English across the Stirling Bridge. He's drawing them across the bridge, and he's all encamped on the other side. He's got them backed in a corner, and they don't even know it. Leadership intelligence, leadership discipline. 500 of the English cross the bridge. His men are getting antsy. They're ready to go. You can imagine a ragtag group of guys. By the way, the English are trained. The Scots are not. These are agrarian guys. They know farming and ranching. They don't know war. So they're getting antsy. They're getting ramped up. They're getting jacked up on Mountain Dew. They're ready to go. And so here's what's happening. The English are now piling across the Stirling Bridge. 1,000 men cross the bridge. 1,000 men. Now it's 1-to-1. Good odds. I'll take those odds any day. Put me in a fight, 1-to-1. Let's go. I've got good chances. I know my capabilities. 1,500 men cross the bridge. 2,000 men cross the bridge. Now, you can imagine that his men are getting a little bit uncomfortable because they know there's still 8,000 men on the other side of the bridge. English are coming. What are the Scots going to do? Wallace is telling his men. Now, if you remember the movie, William Wallace, he goes like this. Hold. Now, everybody in your best Scottish accent, would you say it with me? 1, 2, 3. Hold. Right? Hold. He's telling them hold. Leadership discipline, leadership intelligence. 2,000 men have come across the bridge. Now it's 2,500 men. I want you to go to the battlefield with me. I can only imagine a conversation with a guy by the name of Duncan. Duncan was a good Scottish lad. He looks at William, what are you doing? 2,500 to 1,000. Let's take them now. Everybody say, take them now. Wallace, what does he say? Hold. Hold. Leadership intelligence. Leadership discipline. 3,000 men cross the bridge. His men are getting antsy. They're ready to go. They're getting ramped up. They're like, it's time, it's time. Hold. 3,500 men have crossed the bridge. I want you to go with me to the story of a man by the name of Amish. Amish is standing on the line next to him. I don't understand what you're doing, William. Why are you letting these guys go? They're going to take us now. 3,500 to 1,000, they've got us. He's the little bit of a whiner, right? He's whining right now. 4,000 men. Everybody on the count of 3, say William Wallace. Say hold on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Hold. 4,500 men. 5,000 men. Now, 5,000, 5-to-1, not good odds. But William has understood something that his men has not yet understood. he's got them backed in a corner. He changed the odds. He raised the lid. He cut the leash. He expanded the limitations so that they would no longer be a limitation for them. They don't understand what William understands. Now, I want you to go to a man who is rough and tough. His name is McGregor. McGregor is looking at him, and he is inspired by him. This man, I've never seen such audacity. I've never seen a man with such brazen courage. I've never seen a man with such huge hands. 5,500 cross the bridge when William Wallace unleashes the fury of the Scots. Leadership intelligence, leadership discipline. He unleashes the fury of the Scots, and it's at that moment that spearmen, bowmen, maybe there were some beermen. I would imagine they're Scots, right? They attack. They siege the English. There's nowhere the English can go. The Stirling Bridge is already packed with people. They're jumping off, drowning. They're trying to backtrack. They can't go anywhere. They're drowning. The Scots take them, and they win the first battle of Scotland's freedom. It's because he did something about it. He knew what to do. He knew what needed to be done. Leadership discipline, leadership intelligence. So I want you to take a look at your scenario and your situation right now, and I want you to give some consideration. What are the leashes? What are the limitations? And what are the lids that are holding your organization back right now? What is it that's keeping you from where you want to go, where you should go, where you must go? What are the barriers? You see, they're not as invisible as we think they are. If we'll just take a moment to really look at the battlefield and say, listen, we've got to take a flying leap to win. We've got to take a flying leap to move our business forward. We've got to take a flying leap to move our success pursuits forward. What is it that's holding you back? I want to show 3 things today that will help you remove those limitations, 3 things that will help you remove the lids, 3 things that will help you cut the leashes. The first one is this. You might want to write this down. I want you to begin to live and lead with courage. I don't know of any other pursuit that requires more courage than leading a business. I really don't. You have to invest capital. You have to risk capital. You have to risk opportunities. You have to do things that sometimes don't make sense to other people, even to investors. You have to do things. But I want you to think about this. A number of years ago in the state of Colorado Springs, they brought a new lion into the zoo, right? And in the community where the zoo is, there's houses just like Albuquerque. There's people that live in the surrounding communities. And in the first year that lion was in the zoo, the lion would roar. They would hear that lion roar at night, and that would be cool. I'd love to live where I'd hear a lion roar. I was a few feet away from a lion one time when it roared. I'm like, I do not want to be on the other side of this fence. That thing is fierce. So they would hear the fierceness of the roar of the lion. That lion was something to the people. Year 2, they would hear the roar continue. Year 3, the roar became less. Year 4, that roar became very faint. Year 5, they hardly would ever hear the lion roar ever. What happened to the lion, which happens to a lot of us? We lose our roar. We've forgotten what it means to be fierce. Because it's been so difficult, it's been so problematic, it's been one battle after another, it's been so challenging, and we forget to be fierce. I want to tell you today that the way you take that flying leap is to be courageous. The second way that you take that flying leap, and that is to be audacious. So be courageous, but go to a whole nother level. Do things that are audacious. Do things that are outside of the norm of what could be or what others say should be. Do something audacious. I want us to go to the days of the Round Top Battle in Gettysburg. I want us to go to that moment that many historians believe changed the game to why we actually have 50 states now, the United States of America. Colonel Chamberlain was leading the North. The South, they're battling. What the South don't realize is that Colonel Chamberlain is out of ammunition. His entire regiment has 2 bullets left. There's about 80 men to 400. Odds not so good. 5-1. Still not awesome odds. The 400 are well armed. They have plenty of ammunition. They know where they're going. They know what they're going to do. And they've got them surrounded. They've got Colonel Chamberlain. If they just would have shown some leadership discipline and some leadership intelligence, they would have won. So Colonel Chamberlain is looking at the odds, and he tells his men, he said, men, we are outnumbered. We have 2 bullets left. Can you imagine? 2 bullets left. Most people would have just laid down and died. They would have raised the white flag and said, you know what, we surrender, we give. But Colonel Chamberlain couldn't even imagine that outcome. So he tells his men, he said, men, strap on your bayonets. We will fight these men to the death. He stands on a wall, and here's that moment of audacity. There's only 80 of them. There's 400 of the others around them, ready to attack. Colonel Chamberlain stands on the wall and calls his men to attack the enemy, to attack them. And with such fierce audacity, they attack, and it so intimidates 400 fighting men that they surrender to Colonel Chamberlain. What changed the game that day? Audacity. What will change the game for your leadership, for your business, for your life, for your pursuits? Audacity. We're told to play it so safe and to be so lame and so mundane, and that's not effective leadership. Effective leadership brings courage and audacity to decisions and direction and vision for the organization. Now, can you imagine being on the other side of that battle that day? To find out that you surrendered to an army that had 2 bullets? Leadership intelligence. Leadership discipline. And the final thing I want to leave you with today is grit. So there is courage, there is audacity, and then there is grit. The man's name is William Ernest Henley. You probably don't know him, however, you likely have heard his work. He was a young lad brought up in England in the late 1800s, mid-1800s to late 1800s. He was brought up in a very poor home. His dad was a book salesman in a time when book sales weren't all that great. Global economy at that time was struggling and strained. And so the only way his father knew how to survive the family was to go into debt and debt again, and debt again, to where the family was overwhelmed with debt and creditors and the pressures of all that were coming against them. And William was growing up in this environment. He knew poverty. He knew struggle. He knew strain. He knew difficulty. And this was not... the opportunities weren't there for him. At 12 years of age, he is diagnosed with tubercular arthritis. At that time, there really wasn't a whole lot of cure, except for when it would get to your extremities, they would just start cutting limbs off. And that's what this 12-year-old boy had to face. He's in the hospital. The doctors are looking at his legs, and they tell him, son, you're going to lose at least one of your legs and maybe both. At least one and maybe both. He's 12 years of age, and you need to understand how old he is, because this 12-year-old did something absolutely brilliant. He decided to choose grit instead of defeat. Sitting in his hospital bed just after the doctor cut his left leg off, right below the knee, he writes a famous poem that you've heard. But it was the poem that inspired his life. And at 12 years of age, he decided what his future would be. Impoverished, does not have opportunity. Now he's got severe disabilities and potentially might lose his other leg. The year after he's in the hospital, at 13 years of age, his father dies. Now he's the man of the home. He's got to now provide for his family in a time, in a world, in a way that, how is he going to do this? But he did it. Goes on to get his education, moves on with his life, marries the love of his life. They have their dream daughter. Her name is Wendy. She dies at 5. That poem would be his strength for the rest of his life. I want to read that poem to you today, because I think for some of you today, this is what you need to hear. It's what I need to hear regularly. The poem is called Invictus by William Ernest Henley. Out of the night that covers me, black as the pit from pole to pole, I thank whatever gods may be for my unconquerable soul. 12 years old. In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeonings of chance, my head is bloody, but unbowed. Beyond this place of wrath and tears looms but the horror of the shade, and yet the menace of the years finds and shall find me unafraid. It matters not how straight the gate, how charged with punishments the scroll. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Yeah. So here's what I want you guys to do today. I want you to take a flying leap with me. To lead our businesses forward, listen, New Mexico needs us to succeed. We need more small businesses, and we need more big business in our state to make New Mexico the state it should be. We have so much opportunity here, so many things going for us. But it's going to take courageous leaders. It's going to take audacious business leaders, and it's going to take leadership grit to get this job done. I finish with this. He said, come to the edge. We said, we're afraid. He said, come to the edge. But we said, we may fall and be crushed on the rocks below. He said, come to the edge. So we came to the edge. He pushed us off. And we flew. New Mexico, let's take a flying leap. Thanks, guys, for your opportunity. Thank you, Adrian. Thank you, Julia.